class. In October of 2010, CNN surveyed 888 registered voters in California and found that 53% of them were opposed to Proposition 19. Proposition 19 was legalizing marijuana with a margin of error of 3.5%. Prop 19 was defeated with 54% voting no. All right, so what I want to know is, what is my population sample? What number would be a parameter and what number would be a statistic? So what do we think the population is? 88? Or 888? Is that everybody? It's the registered voters that they surveyed, right? So that's my sample. The 888 that were surveyed is my sample. So what is my population? Registered voters in California. Or is it just, yeah. All right, now we've got some different numbers. We've already decided that 888 is our sample size. I'm going to throw 3.5% out. That is another number that we are going to look at a little bit later on, but not right now. So I need to decide, is 53% or 54%? Which one of those is the parameter and which one of those is the statistic? Statistic would be 53%. Why?
Because it says that the survey, the sample was 53%.
So they got that number from the sample, so that is their statistic because it's based on a sample. Now, that leaves 54% to be the population. How do we know that's actually the population?
Not everybody voted, maybe.
Maybe not everybody voted, but whether you voted or not, you made a decision, right? You're still registered to vote, and by having no voice at all, you still made a decision. You're included in that, you just decided not to actually give your opinion. So it is still based on the entire population, because in the end, that's what actually happened with that proposition. And even though we want to think, or it's kind of hard to think because they're like, well, not everybody voted, that was still your right. You still exercised your right, and you were still a part of the population that made the decision by deciding not to vote. So, still part of our population. All right. Other questions? Okay, so I want you guys to get together, work with each other, and go through A through H, and let's decide whether we think the number they're talking about is a statistic or a parameter. So let's see what we can come up with. The actual average height of all adult human males in the U.S. is 5 feet 9.4 inches. Statistic or parameter? Why parameter? Because it says the word all adults, right? Or all adult males. So we're looking at that keyword all. 60% of households sampled from the U.S. own more than one car. Statistic. Why? Because the word sample is in there. So as soon as I see the word sample, I'm going to start going to statistic. Currently, there are 18,759 houses in Santee, California. We're looking at parameter because you're only focused on Santee, California, right? And when I took this, that was the actual amount. It might not be anymore, but it was the correct amount at the time. The average age of a sample of men in Orlando, Florida was 43 years. Statistic? Is that it? All right. Because we're looking at a sample again. The average SAT score in California in 1990 was 897. Parameter, because we're talking about just California. If you broadened it to all SAT scores, then California would be your sample. But since we're just looking at the California ones as our population, we got a parameter. A mall survey found that 36% of women prefer lipstick to lip balm. Statistic. Surveys are often, are usually always a sample, because do you think they surveyed every single woman that uses lipstick and lip balm? No. And for that matter, I mean, lip balm, men use it too, right? So you got to survey everyone. All right, SINDAG. Does anyone know what SINDAG is? It's a San Diego specific organization. So just so we know, they're talking about the information specific to just San Diego. Estimate that in 2008, the household median income in San Diego was $66,715. So I'm hearing both. So I can actually see both arguments. If you're saying they're just looking specifically at San Diego, and you would have to know that they were able to get everyone's income. Did they get everyone's income in San Diego, you think?
No.
Probably not, right? So they're probably, with the estimate, just looking at a sample. They actually have the best one, though, because they are so specific to San Diego. They know most of them, but you probably left some people out. But I could also see the argument for parameter there. In 2006, 10.1% of deaths in California prisons were ruled a suicide. So if you were talking about all deaths that happen in prisons, and then they only gave you information for California, you could turn it into a sample. But since we're focusing in, and they're being more specific about just California, California is our population. So the more specific that they are, it's probably more of a population than it is a sample. Does that make sense? All right, any questions? I would say statistic, because it's almost impossible to get every single person that lives in San Diego's income. So to have an estimate for that, like everybody, you'd have to have everyone who lives here and works here's income. And I don't know that any one place has everyone's actual salary. Does that make sense?
So
Yes.
for number H, to make sure I understand right, you're saying in 2006, of all prison deaths, 10.1% just in California ruled suicide. That would make it a statistic?
That makes it, because we're just looking at California, it's a parameter. If they had said they wanted to know about all prisons deaths, not just California, and then you only had information on California, California would be your sample, and then that makes it a statistic. But since we're specific to just looking at the California prisons, California is our population, which makes it a parameter. Other questions? So what were some of our key words that signaled statistic instead of parameter? Sample, estimate, survey. So these are all my words for telling me it's a statistic. And I'm going to go over here and say the word all. And if they said something like actual, are for parameters. So if you know stuff about the actual population or something like that, then you can go back to a parameter. All right. Any questions on that? All right, let's take a look at 3. A political scientist wants to know how college students feel about social security system. She obtains a list of 3,456 undergraduates at her college and mails a questionnaire to 250 students selected at random. Only 104 questionnaires are returned. What is the population in the study? Be careful, what group does she want information about? All right, so what do we think the population is? College students, all right. What is the sample? 250. So even though she only got 104 back, 250 were a part of her sample because she gave them the option to answer her. And they, again, kind of made their statement by not sending it back. What are some reasons this sample is not representative of the actual population that she's interested in? Yes? Is only sent to a small amount of people. Anything else? Yes. It was only people at her college. So it's specific to hers. Yeah.
And also it was only undergraduates.
It was only undergraduates. So only students at her college. And only undergraduates. So if you're going to talk about all college students, you need to include them all. You need to go to the graduate level as well as the undergraduate level. And going to one location is probably not very representative of your student population. People in Southern California probably have different ideas than people in Northern California. So you should make sure that you're getting a variety and making sure you're kind of covering all aspects of that student population in order to have a fairly good sample. Is there anything else we can think of?
Maybe there's a questionnaire.
There could be something in the questionnaire that can be a problem. One thing that's definitely going to skew her results is that she didn't even get half of her people to answer her, right? So she got a very small response to come back out of her already kind of small sample for this population. So not having a very good response rate is going to be a problem there. All right, questions on that? All right, so I want to look at specific things like sampling methods, because in order to have a good study, you have to have a good sampling method to go along with it. So the best possible sampling would be the entire population of interest. In order to get most accurate picture of the U.S., the population, the government does census. What are some drawbacks or limitations of a census?
People like me who don't want to be bothered.
People who don't want to be bothered and maybe don't answer. What else?
People move or change addresses.
People
Somebody
move.
die.
They change their addresses, and so you can't actually reach that person. What else? Yes. Some people just don't have an address. What else?
Would age be a factor?
Not necessarily. I mean, they do tend to only send them to adults, but the age isn't necessarily a big a factor.
What if people,
Go, why go?
what if people are double counted, like if they're in one family and then in another family?
That's definitely a possibility. You can get double counted. I know since I changed my name, I still get a voting ballot under both names. So, could be counted twice.
Oh, I get one in Spanish and one in English.
Really? That's interesting. So people could be double counted. What were you going to say?
then,